Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen say they fired multiple missiles at Israel's resort city of Eilat. That pronouncement came just hours after Israel's military said it had shot down a missile from Yemen before it crossed into Israeli territory. The latest burst of violence between the distant enemies has led to deaths in both countries and fears of escalation.
In Tel Aviv, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu oversees airstrikes on the Houthi stronghold of Hodeidah. Sometime later, fighter jets bomb oil depots and a power plant in the strategically important port city on the Red Sea. The Ministry of Health in Sana'a says dozens were wounded in raging fires triggered by the airstrikes. Many of them admitted to hospital with severe burns.
We were sitting, and suddenly the airstrike happened. There were several strikes.
The recent escalation comes against the backdrop of a severe humanitarian crisis in Yemen that has left around 8 out of 10 people dependent on humanitarian aid. According to the UN, about 80% of that aid and 70% of all imports enter through Hodeidah.
This Israeli assault has further depleted our fuel and essential supplies needed by the citizens and the people.
Israel says it hit the port because the area is used to deliver Iranian arms to Yemen, and in response to months of aggression against Israel, including a deadly drone attack on a residential building in Tel Aviv on Friday.
I have a message for Israel's enemies. Make no mistake, we will defend ourselves by all means, on all fronts. Anyone who harms us will pay a very heavy price for their aggression.
In recent months, Iran-backed Houthi militants have repeatedly attacked ships passing through the Red Sea in a stated attempt to force an end to Israel's military campaign in Gaza. They have also launched missiles and drones directly at Israel, but most of those projectiles were intercepted until Friday. In Yemen's capital, a Houthi spokesman said his forces wouldn't be deterred by Israel's threat.
The Yemeni armed forces also confirm that the response to the Israeli aggression on our country is inevitable and will be great and mighty, Allah willing.
No empty words. On Sunday, the Israeli military said it intercepted a missile fired towards the resort town of Eilat. One of multiple drones and ballistic missiles, Houthi militants declared they fired at Israeli targets in and along the Red Sea.
Special correspondent Aya Ibrahim has been following events from Jerusalem.
They're certainly concerning for the region. We're now seeing a sort of tit-for-tat strike, countering another strike between Israel and the Houthis in Yemen, and this adds another layer of tension and escalation to the situation in the country, 9 months of the war in Gaza, and of course the ongoing clashes between Israel and Hezbollah at the Israeli northern border. So this just adds another layer of instability, uncertainty, although it is too early to tell what the end of these strikes could be, if it will lead to more escalation, or if in fact the Houthis may be deterred by the most recent Israeli strike on that port in Yemen. Right, there's a lot happening. Today, Israel's military is starting to draft ultra-Orthodox men. This is because of a landmark Supreme Court order. It's a very sensitive issue in Israel. How much of a threat is this for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government? It could be quite threatening for his governing coalition. His coalition partners come from the ultra-Orthodox political parties in Israel, and they, of course, the Benjamin Netanyahu's partners vehemently reject this court ruling. So if they bolt out of that coalition, that could lead to the collapse of his government at a time where his popularity is already at an all-time low because of the war and the fact that there are still hostages held in Gaza. And so this could, spell trouble for Benjamin Netanyahu's governing coalition, although we'll have to wait and see how this plays out in the coming days.
Right. More on that. Netanyahu is also facing additional pressure inside Israel. Protesters filled the streets in Tel Aviv again, demanding a deal to return the remaining hostages. How's all this playing out ahead of a trip to the U.S. next week?
Well, the United States is Israel's biggest ally, and the protesters that hit the streets in Tel Aviv and elsewhere every week, they're acutely aware of that. So they are often in these protests calling directly on the U.S. government to apply more pressure on Hamas and Israel to reach a deal. And so even though these protests happen on a weekly basis since the war began, families of hostages, but also Israelis from all walks of life taken to the streets demanding a deal, we can expect that they will have a heightened tone as the Prime Minister visits the United States, because it's been 9 months and there are many families that are still waiting for their loved ones to come back alive or dead.
Right. Special correspondent Aya Ibrahim in Jerusalem. Thank you.